Nick Sirianni got paid. The Eagles actually did not fire a coach who won a Super Bowl. But does that one Super Bowl make Nick Sirianni untouchable? Nope. And I'll tell you why here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On NFL. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On NFL podcast, where we take the clips from around the National Football League, combined with the biggest stories, and we sit here and have a good barbershop debate about those clips. Today's guest is obviously on Tuesday, my man Kevin R. Stryker from Locked On Ravens. He is here to give you all that good breakdown from the National Football League. We always, like when we get him and Chris, we always try to start trouble here between the Steelers and the Ravens. So we're going to do that again today. All right, but make sure you tap in wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen. We will be there on Locked On NFL. All right, so here's where we're going. In the third segment, we're going to talk about the Tush Push and why just one team seems like they are looking pretty bad in all of this. And that's the Green Bay Packers. It's not even about Philly. But we'll stretch that and try to figure out why does the greatest product on TV need to be changed every single year just because you have the power to change it. Also, Ravens and Steelers stuff in that third segment. Caleb Williams in the middle of the show. We're going to talk about him, his drama. It seems like it'll never end. It was happening before the draft, and now after a rookie year, it's still happening. But we're going to tell you why there's another person that may even make it even worse for him that resides in Washington. But we're going to start the show talking about Nick Sirianni getting an extension in Philly. Normally, that would not be a surprise to anyone, but Nick Sirianni was about to get fired 2 years ago, and the Philadelphia Eagles actually did fire another head coach, Doug Peterson, after he won a Super Bowl after only 2 years. So we're glad Nick Sirianni made it there, Kevin R. Stryker. Sirianni actually made it to the point where he got an extension from Jeffrey Lurie and, of course, Harry Roseman.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll be the first to say it, and I'm probably one of many. He proved me wrong. I thought he was out of there.
Me too.
And, look, I'm glad that he did. It's always cool to see coaches kind of go on redemption stories like this. And obviously there's a lot of controversy surrounding Sirianni in terms of, some of the sideline things that he's done over the course of his tenure there in Philly. But you know what? He's a passionate guy. He's a fiery guy. And, he certainly puts that on display in more ways than one. So, look, he's someone that won a Super Bowl. You're going to get rewarded with an extension if you win a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just procedure to me at this point. But as you talked about, Wig, that doesn't necessarily mean your long-term future is secured, because we have seen that with a lot of other guys that have won one Super Bowl, while they might be still employed by their teams, there's a lot of controversy around those coaches, whether they should have been fired a couple of years ago.
We're going to name them, too. That's what we do. We're going to call names. We ain't going to hide, man. We're going to talk about them. Talk about these one Super Bowl winning coaches. We named two. There's another one out there we forgot. And when you and I were talking, I'm going to get to that. But I'm going to listen to my man, Lou Dibiase from Locked On Eagles, talk about Nick Sirianni.
The Philadelphia Eagles agreed to a new multi-year contract extension today with head coach Nick Sirianni, and I think this is a no-brainer after winning Super Bowl 59. While I've had my issues with Nick, I wanted him fired after Week 4 this year against Tampa Bay. I've always wanted a play-calling head coach long-term. The fact of the matter is, he is the most underrated part of the Eagles' championship win this year and the run they've been on since 2021. And I think a lot of Nick's strengths aren't quantifiable with numbers and data and film study like others are. So he kind of gets underrated, right? But what matters most? What's most quantifiable for a head coach? It's wins and losses. And he's up there with the likes of, Vince Lombardi and Bill Belichick from a win percentage perspective through his first 5 years. He's gotten to multiple Super Bowls. He's won one. And if he doesn't listen to his players this year and make it a run-first offense behind Saquon Barkley, they don't win a championship. So Sirianni honestly might be the biggest reason you won a title this year, and he still doesn't get enough credit, including from me.
I think that's very big of Louis, and it's big of you, and it's going to be big of me because I'm about to do it too. I thought he was done. I thought he was cooked, bro. I mean, like meat falling off the bone. It's like it's overcooked, dog. And I thought he was, and it turns out he wasn't. I think the thing that makes us think that he's always gonna get fired, or that he's always gonna be in trouble, that little quirkiness about him, I think that thing is also the thing that makes him be able to put up with the pressure that comes from working for Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and the expectations of the Philadelphia fans.
Yeah, and Philly is a tough place to play. It's a tough place to coach. That fan base is passionate, and they're going to let you know about it. They are going to let you know about it. And, there was a lot of scrutiny that Sirianni faced, especially after the collapse they had the previous season. I mean, that was unprecedented, where it looked like they were a team that was going to compete for a Super Bowl. And then all of a sudden, they just lose, 6 of their last 7. They lose in the playoffs in disappointing fashion, whatever that was. And, there were questions about should he have even been brought back that offseason. And so they gave him another shot, because Philly's a team with guys like Hurts. You bring in Saquon. I mean, what was a successful season for Philly going to look like? Well, it was a Super Bowl, because you stack your team up with talent. Anything less than a Super Bowl is a disappointment. And that's how it feels for all these top teams. We're Wig in a championship or bust culture right now. It's just that era where, if you don't win a Super Bowl, it's a failure if you're a top 5 team or a team that's competing. And so I just feel like for the way that he's handled that spotlight in Philadelphia, it certainly, I think, took a little bit of time, right? There were some moments of weakness, if you want to call it weakness. I don't know if you do, but, for lack of better words. But I think, to me, the way that he was able to have this team rally around him and hit all the right buttons, that's important in the playoffs, is hitting the right buttons. And, making sure your guys are playing at the highest level. It's all important. So credit to Sirianni. I mean, again, you and I have said it. I thought he was out. I thought he wasn't going to survive. And here he is, proving everybody wrong with an extension that, he very well deserved.
Absolutely deserved it. And sometimes it's the other things that you do that helps you as a coach, like being brave enough to fire your staff, right? People like Brian Johnson, guys that you knew very, very well, to get rid of them, and then bring in big personality guy like Vic Fangio and just say, you got that. And then Kellen Moore, and you got that, right? I think he's going to be judged a little bit about how he does it this year, even though they still got Fangio. They're going to switch up offensive coordinators again. I think when you get this thing rolling to a certain point where you have all of those really, really good players on offense under contract that now have championship DNA, what's going to happen is, in my opinion, he's going to have to do even less stuff on the offense. They just got to just keep it rolling now, because now that they have the blueprint and formula on how to win, that's what everybody's going to want to follow. The Bears, they got a new coach, Ben Johnson, all of this new energy. Same old drama, though, from the past. Everybody keeps talking about Caleb Williams. I told Julian yesterday that the draft process has everybody in a headlock, right? Because we can never get past that. Even with Brock Purdy, we're still talking about where he was drafted as opposed to what he's done on the field the last 3 years. That should tell us whether or not he's worth his money or not. I'm telling you, that draft process is a mess. And it's still going on right now, to the point where people in Chicago are still talking about Caleb Williams and what he wanted to do before the draft. So we're going to talk about it here in just a second on Locked On NFL. All right, man, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right, man. The NBA playoffs is in full. When I say full swing, I mean full swing, and FanDuel is the place where you absolutely need to be, because there's so many different things that you can make sure that you can win some money on. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Who's going to make those big shots? Is it going to be SGA or is it going to be Ant-Man? There you go. We got 2 great players in the West, and then we got 2 rugged teams in the East. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Very important. If it wins, it'll get you $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, rolling along here with my man Kevin Ostriker here on Locked On NFL. Had a nice little conversation about Nick Sirianni. There's some other coaches, and I'll mention them real quick. We were talking about Sean Payton. He didn't necessarily get fired. He kind of quit. Gary Kubiak walked away because of some health issues. Those are guys that won one Super Bowl. And no one else has won a Super Bowl in one place and gone on and won it somewhere else. But there is one dude that's been fired twice. We forgot about him. Mike McCarthy got fired in Green Bay and Dallas, and he has that one Super Bowl. And we're sitting here talking about Nick Sirianni. He's safe for now. The Philadelphia Eagles have shown you they will move on from a coach in a heartbeat. So it's going to be very, very important that Sirianni continues to do the things that they did last year to be successful. Now, for the team that needs to improve everything that they've done, the Chicago Bears. I think they have improved. They actually traded for Joe Thuney, and they got him under contract. He had an extension, got a 2-year deal for him. So that's not the short-term deal that everybody thought. They also invested money on the interior of the offensive line. All of this is to protect Caleb Williams. Here's the issue, though. A lot of the stuff going on with Caleb Williams, man, it ain't got nothing to do with football per se. Listen to my man Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears.
You can't blame Caleb Williams for not wanting to be a Chicago Bear initially, but you also can't fault him for how he's carried himself since he's joined the Chicago Bears. I'm Lauren Cox, host of the Locked On Bears podcast, and the ESPN bombshell from Seth Wickersham's book is sending reverberations throughout Chicago about their quarterback and his loyalty to the city, and it's hard to find much fault anywhere in Caleb Williams in this process. Yes, he explored his options. Yes, he didn't want to be a Chicago Bear. He didn't have much reason to want to be a Chicago Bear, and generally, he was right about the offensive coordinator and the infrastructure in the city. But he never let that become a problem after he became a Chicago Bear. He didn't show signs of unhappiness. He leaned in fully and embraced this city and this franchise to try and make the most out of a situation that maybe he didn't love in the first place, but could have some ripple effects on the future for the Bears in the next few years of Caleb Williams' career. And we're going to break it all down for you on the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
KO, man, listen to me. Things can take on a life of their own. You follow a quarterback that somebody always has something negative to say about, and whether or not he can do this or do that. But Lamar doesn't necessarily bring a bunch of stuff on himself either. And I'm not blaming Caleb Williams for it, but I'm just saying young people need to understand everything that you do at some point, people are going to be able to use it and hold it against you. The dude done played the whole season and they still talking about what he wanted to do prior to the draft. Caleb can't win for losing, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a situation where, look, if you didn't want to go to Chicago, like, that's well within his right to feel like a situation is not a good place for him. But the Eli Manning is not going to happen to you. It's not the first overall pick is not always going to get to choose where they go. So sometimes you just gotta make lemonade out of sour lemons. And for a guy like Caleb Williams, who, it wasn't necessarily about the personnel around him, right? Obviously, this is about Matt Eberflus. This is about, the offensive coordinator and Shane Waldron, which, again, I don't blame him for not feeling like that was a good situation. Obviously, you heard Jackson Smith-Njigba at the Super Bowl, I believe it was last year. He was asked about Waldron, who was his former offensive coordinator in Seattle, and he tried his best to give him compliments, but he didn't really feel like he was confident in his abilities. So, look, now you have Ben Johnson. Like, I feel like it all worked out. Ben Johnson is going to help Caleb Williams, and I think that the new offense is going to help him flourish. It just took a tough year, but I know that the article coming out and everything in it is not a great look. But we've seen a lot of young quarterbacks that have had moments of not great. I mean, we talked about Anthony Richardson last season, him coming out of the game and tapping his helmet. Like, it's about learning from those and figuring out how to handle NFL life and the stories that can come out about you in those moments. And so for Caleb, again, it's not a great look to have the article come out that way, but at the end of the day, if he delivers Chicago a Super Bowl, no one's going to care. No one's going to care.
And I don't mind that he didn't want to go there because it's a lame duck situation. It's sort of like the way Cleveland and the Giants are right now. I mean, it's like when you're a quarterback, you don't want to go somewhere where you think the dude you're going to play for is going to get fired after one season, and you might not even really get a chance to play very much. And even if you did get a chance to play, you're only getting a chance to play because you're trying to save his job. All of that stuff gets really, really weird, in my opinion. But there's something else, too, that Caleb has to not necessarily guard against because he can't control it, but he has to understand that it exists. And what that is Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels on and off the field he's done things in a way that people are extremely comfortable with. And that's not saying that he's sold out or anything, but he's been a great leader. He's been quiet. He's ingratiated himself into the city. He's accepted it. He's opened his arms, and they've opened his arms, and then they were winning games on the field, and he played in spectacular fashion. He looked like the dude that was responsible for them winning, not the dude that was like, oh, well, it ain't my fault we're not winning. And I think that's the thing that he is going to have to worry about a little bit. Yesterday we talked about Brock Purdy getting paid. Today we're going to talk about another 49er getting paid, and that's Fred Warner. Fred Warner got his money. Now he's the third. George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Fred Warner. There's just this. To me, the 49ers are saying this is who we're going to hang our hat on. Debo's gone. These are the guys that are going to carry us into the future, and they still have some stuff left. Listen to the guys from Locked On 49ers discuss the great Fred Warner.
According to Ian Rappaport, all-pro linebacker Fred Warner has agreed with the 49ers on a new 3-year contract extension worth $63 million, and he's going to get most of that, 56.7 of that, guaranteed. And now Fred Warner becomes the NFL's highest paid linebacker.
Yeah, I think you got to be excited for the guys that the 49ers were able to lock up long term. And the interesting thing is when you look at kind of the salary cap and 49ers potentially being up against it, they're big name guys. They got those guys locked in. So it's going to be about the others. It's going to be about drafting and developing guys and making sure that you continue to hit on those mid to late round guys, because they're high draft picks that they wanted to put a lot of money in. And other guys, Fred Warner, not really a high draft pick, mid round or day 2 pick. Brock Purdy, day 3 pick, last pick in the draft. They've done a terrific job there, but now your high end guys you need to hit on, right, when you're in this kind of situation.
The 49ers are one of those teams. It's like you look at them and go, okay, what's going on? They're purging all of their talent, but they're signing other guys. I think them keeping the leadership around is a good thing. I think them paying Brock Purdy was a good thing. There's some people going to say we shouldn't pay Purdy. And then they're going to say, well, you shouldn't pay Warner because he's too old. And I'm like, who you going to give money to if you don't pay guys that are really, really performing well? And Fred Warner's going to Canton. Pay him.
Yeah, Fred Warner was a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. And again, this is kind of like the market where Roquan got his deal a couple of years ago here in Baltimore, and Fred surpassed that. And, Roquan is probably going to surpass that again. But that market hasn't moved much. That Roquan deal was years ago. Mm-hmm. There just aren't a lot of high-quality inside linebackers like that anymore. And a lot of that does have to do, or at least some of it has to do, with the fact that a lot of teams are playing more heavy DB packages, not necessarily needing that star inside linebacker where, of course, it helps you. But, Roquan and Fred Warner are probably going to be going back and forth with each other for a little bit in those conversations in terms of highest paid. So, look, Warner's incredible. Like, the 49ers, if they were to let him out of the building, would have been a grave mistake, especially because, you're trying to compete with Brock Purdy, and that contract's a whole different conversation with how big it is because it will limit San Francisco in other ways. But, you have to be in the business of bringing good players back to your football team, especially when you're able to draft, develop, and see their careers through. And San Francisco has had success in doing that, at least for the most part. Of course, every team doesn't have an 100% hit rate. That'd be crazy. But Warner's one of those guys that you feel like can really come in and continue to play at an all-pro level for the duration of this deal. And so if you have a guy who's going to continue to play at a high level, there's not worry of drop-off. Well, I think that's something the 49ers had to do.
John Lynch has been saved by his ability to acquire Hall of Fame level talent. And I'll tell you, trading for Trent Williams, trading for Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey might not make the Hall of Fame, but drafting Nick Bosa, drafting George Kittle, and doing so well in the draft that they could let other guys go, even if you talk about Ricky Pearsall from just a year ago, getting Brock Purdy in the 7th round, and Fred Warner in the trade where they didn't take Mahomes and they took Solomon Thomas in the Mitch Trubisky swap. They actually got Fred Warner with one of those picks. So even when they passed up Mahomes, they got a Hall of Famer in that one too, and Fred Warner. That's the saving grace, because other than that, anybody that gives up all of that stuff he gave up to move up to Trey Lance, and Trey Lance ended up being that bad, would have been fired a long, long time ago. Let's talk about the tush push and the Packers and get to whether or not the Steelers will benefit from playing the Baltimore Ravens late in the 2025 season. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Hey, third segment here. Kevin, let me ask you a question. Is the NFL the best thing going on earth?
Yeah, it's a year-round thing, man. It has to be.
There, right? It's the king, right? So my question is, if something is the king, why do you have to change it every year just because you have a competition committee that has a rule that says, okay, anything we need to do, and we find something that we need to do, and this year is the tush push. I think too much is being made out of it. I think a whole bunch is being made out of it by one team, and that's the Green Bay Packers, and it kind of makes them look like they're a little bit soft.
This conversation, it's something, and I remember us
talking. I know you're tired of it. We talked about it before.
Well, the big thing is just like, if you want to stop something, then just stop it. Like, just stop it from happening, right? You're not. I know people are talking about injury concerns. I don't necessarily believe in all that. Like, I just think that it's a play that the Eagles found, that other teams also use, by the way. This is not just an Eagles thing. Other teams have adapted this into their game plan.
Right.
And it's not like the Eagles are using illegal formations or they're adding an extra guy on the field for it. It's a football play. And so if you don't like it, then stop it. Get on the field on 3rd and 1 and push Jalen Hurts back and make it 4th and 2. That's my thing, where, rule changes are good for the game, right? It is. You know, you evolve the game, you figure things out, you identify where your strengths and weaknesses are as a league. But it feels like, and especially with the whole playoff situation, divisions, what is that going to look like? Sometimes it feels like it's moving too fast. I mean, we just got a huge kickoff revamp a couple of years ago.
Changed it. That
was massive. That was, historic, unprecedented. And now we're talking about taking things out of the game that other teams use we talked about this, Wig. Should the NFL ban Lamar Jackson options because it's unstoppable? Should they ban the Mahomes sidearm throw because it's impossible to stop? Should they, ban Jamar Chase from being able to jump up to catch the football because he's awesome at doing it? Like, you're not banning guys and doing things they're good at, because guess what? That's what makes them good, and that's what makes sports. Guys, some guys are really good at some things, and other guys aren't as good as those guys at other things. So if a team is really good at doing something and it's not illegal and it's not hurting anybody, then just stop it or don't and lose the game. That's my thing.
Right. So the way I feel about it too is this: it ain't like the league tells Philly, y'all are the only ones that can do this. Do it back. But you know why you can't? It's a copycat league. They copy each other all the time. You know why you can't? Oh, because their 4th smallest offensive lineman is 325 pounds. Okay, so they're bigger and more stronger and more physical than you. Then get big, strong, and physical and do it back to them. That is just, for me, it's just like, just because you can't stop something and everybody's going to use the safety. Ain't nobody worried about safety. I'm telling you right now, one of the biggest lies on earth is that people are actually worried about safety more than they are entertainment. That is not true. Speaking of entertaining, it's always entertaining when the Ravens and the Steelers get together. Chris Carter noticed on the schedule, though, that's going to be a while. They're not going to play till late in the year. I think that happened this past season, too, if I'm not mistaken. Chris says it's to the advantage of the Pittsburgh Steelers because they have some growing to do. Listen to this.
Hey everyone, here's your Locked On Steelers reaction to the Steelers schedule release brought to you by Game Time. The Steelers' most exciting element of this schedule is the fact that they're getting to play the Ravens twice towards the end of the season in the last 6 weeks. Yes, this kind of stacks up like last season when the Steelers had a gauntlet at the end of the season, but this also gives the Steelers time to build on the trenches on both sides of the ball. The Steelers' offensive line will be young this season as they're trying to pull together Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, but this gives them a chance to grow into being a more efficient unit by the time that they play the Ravens. And the reason that the Steelers went and got Derek Harmon and Y.A. Black in this draft class was to stuff the Ravens' run that ran them over in the playoffs games. This will give them time to grow with Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward and make that a chance to be a primetime matchup for the Steelers that maybe they'll stand a better chance at winning this time around. For more, check out the Locked On Steelers podcast. This reaction episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today to get the best tickets to the best events out there.
Hey, man, I'm always looking forward to the Steelers. Just tell me what day of the week the game is on. I know both of them are on a Sunday. One has to be on a Saturday and the other one has to be on a Thursday night or something like that, doesn't it?
Man, in 2020, they played on a Wednesday afternoon.
See, I'm telling you, it's always something weird about the game, bro.
Yeah, and that is what it is, where, you know, Ravens and Steelers games are always hard fought. Although I will say the past two where the Ravens have dominated Pittsburgh, which has been a turn of fortune considering the Steelers had the Ravens number for the past handful of seasons. But, you know, it's a hard fought rivalry. And look, I'll be the first to admit that we are not in the days of Ray Lewis, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger. Right? We're not there. But I do think that both teams, honestly, have injected some juice back in the rivalry. You know, Patrick Queen making his comments last year and, you know, the way that the playoff game went, I'm sure will motivate Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. But yeah, having those games later in the season and just from a Baltimore perspective, they also play Cincinnati twice very late. Their division schedule does not start until about week 11 in terms of teams that they are going to be competing with because, quite frankly, Big, I'm not really factoring Cleveland into this conversation right now.
I was waiting for a Cleveland drive-by. I'm telling you, man, every time I talk to the people in the AFC North, somebody gives me a little drive-by with Cleveland. Cleveland's just standing over there.
You know why it is? It's because you know what Chris and Jake and James and I had to hear for so long is, the Browns are the offseason champs for the 8th year in a row. Yeah. This is finally the year they're going to dethrone the Ravens or the Steelers or the best. And then guess what? They were right back in the cellar where they've always been. So Cleveland can have the most talented roster on earth. I'm not going to trust them until I actually see it happen with my own eyes. Because we've seen those teams, Odell and Jarvis come in, Baker's there, everybody thinks they're going to win everything, and then it's a disaster. So to me,
did you just go Matt Derry on me? Am I talking to you about the Ravens and the Steelers, and you just took a drive-by at Cleveland, and they just standing over there minding their business? Because you know Matt Derry does that all the time.
Man. Hey, I'm curious to see if Joe Flacco comes back to Baltimore and starts week 2. That would be his first time ever playing at M&T Bank. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. But Pittsburgh and Baltimore is it's a rivalry for the ages. It's the best in the NFL, in my opinion. And I know there are varying degrees of opinions on that, but those are two games, especially cold weather late in the year. Like, you got to love that.
Oh, yeah, always. I see somebody trip somebody or a little fight break out. I think it's great. I think it's great theater, which is why they need to stop changing the rules all the time. The game is the game. Those dudes going to give you all the entertainment you need, man. Stop changing rules all the time in the National Football League. Make sure y'all follow this rule. Make Locked On NFL Scouting your second listen of the day because Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the smartest fan in the National Football League. Make sure you tap in and Locked On NFL Scouting wherever you get your podcast. All right, Kevin Ostracker, get on out of here. And on your way out of here, when you leaving to go get in your car, say something else bad about Cleveland because I know you're gonna do it and just
don't hate on them too much. Not too, only a little is allowed.
All right, just a little bit. All right, Tony Wiggins, Kevin Ostracker. We'll see you later here on Locked On NFL.